back to Bon's Kitchen. Today I'm going to be making basic loaves of bread, just white loaves of bread. They're going to be nutritious and no preservatives and no additives, just plain white bread. Everyone can make bread at home. It's really easy and simple. It's a process of time. It takes a little time to do bread, but it's really easy. It's only 3 ingredients. It's flour, salt, and yeast or starter. And in this bread, it has a little bit of olive oil. I just want it to be a little soft and moist. For slicing, this is like a sandwich bread. I was thinking about is, you know, when I went to the store the other day, we try to buy healthy bread every time and buy the most expensive, try to get wheat bread and something good for our family to eat. But just to give you an idea of what bread has in it, I was just reading this healthy multigrain bread. It has about a paragraph of ingredients that are not good for us. We don't even know what they are. So I'm gonna just try to attempt to read some of these ingredients. Whole wheat flour, water, wheat gluten. It has modified wheat starch, sugars, yeast, glucose, preservatives. What else? I can't even see this. It's so small. Sorbic acid, soybean oil, monoglycized, whatever that means, whatever. Monocalcium phosphate. Oh my, that sounds interesting. What? Soy? Ethanol? That doesn't sound good. Goodness. I just tried to read most of the ingredients on here. There's so many things that I don't even know what they are. But anyway, you get the idea of what I was saying. Even though we think we're eating healthy with this, there's 100 ingredients, so we need to make our own bread at home and feed our family the best food that we can. So here we go. I'm gonna get started with this just loaf of bread. This recipe makes 2 loaves. You will need a scale. If you don't have a scale, maybe if you can buy a scale, because if you're baking, you know, you have to scale everything and it makes it more precise. Even if you're baking pastries, you have to scale. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, we're gonna get started with our bread. I gotta put my glasses on because I can't see. I have a recipe actually that I'm reading off. I want it to be precise. I saw a recipe a while back on the internet. I don't remember when, but I kind of modified it a little bit. With this bread, actually, I am using King Arthur's unbleached bread flour. And you can use all-purpose flour also. My daughter bought this scale for me on the internet. If you would like to buy something like this, similar scale, she will add the website, so you can actually go on that website and order it online. You can also order the flour online if you can't find King Arthur. I know most of the stores don't carry King Arthur, but I like this brand, but you don't have to use it. We are going to need 1.2 kilo of flour. So I don't want to confuse you. This is really easy. So every bread that you make, it has to have a hydration level. Percentage of hydration. This bread has about 77% of hydration. Part of the hydration is going to be with water, and then I have a starter here. The starter is actually, it's a starter that I've had it for about 5 to 6 months. When I feed my starter, I take the discards out of the starter, and this is basically what they call discards out of the starter. It has a lot of bubble and fermentation in it, but instead of throwing it out, I'm going to add it to this bread. It's going to add a lot of leavening and also a great flavor. So this starter is actually half flour and half water. I'll show you another video how to make a starter, but if you want to make this bread without a starter, you could just use yeast and just like the instant yeast. I have 15 grams of yeast, so you can do this bread without the starter. And then also I have 20 grams of salt. We have 650 grams of water. Remember, this starter is half flour, half water. So there's 100 grams of flour in here, 100 grams of water. So with this means that we have 750 grams of water, including what's in the starter. I'm adding a little bit of olive oil, like virgin olive oil. It doesn't have to be extra virgin, just a light olive oil. This is 60 grams. Okay, we're gonna get started. 650 grams of flour. I'm going to use my KitchenAid to mix this, but you can mix it by hand. If you don't have a KitchenAid, you can actually do it by hand. This bread doesn't need a lot of kneading, just to incorporate everything together. So what I'm gonna do, actually, I'm gonna mix my liquids with the starter first and add it to the flour. I'm gonna add my salt about 30 minutes later, but I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so now we're going to mix the water, the starter.
How much water was that?
The water, 650 grams. Like if you don't have a starter, so you can use 750 grams of water. because the starter has 100 grams of water, like I said before. So that's why I'm only using 650 grams of water. And I'm gonna add the oil, which is 60 grams. And also I'm gonna add the instant yeast, that is 15 grams. Put it all together. So I put the flour and all the liquids and oil, the mixture that I had in here with the starter and the yeast. I'm gonna let it mix for about 5 minutes and let it rest for 30 minutes. And that's what they call autolyse. And autolyse actually will give a chance to flour to hydrate and also for the yeast to start the fermentation process. And in 30 minutes, I will add the salt, because the salt usually it kind of slows down the fermentation. We don't want to do that. So I'll come back in 30 minutes, and this dough doesn't have to be soft. It's just shaggy. Let it just mix for about 5 minutes, and then we'll let it rest 30 minutes and come back. So the dough's been mixing for about 4 or 5 minutes, and you see how it's shaggy and it's sticky. So we're gonna let it autolyse, which is the first rest, is about 30 minutes before we add the salt to it. So we'll come back in 30 minutes. Okay, so we let the dough rest 30 minutes. As you can see, it's starting to hydrate it. It's starting to look a little bit better than before. So we're gonna add the salt. I'm gonna transfer it to this bowl because it's easier for me to fold it. It's already like, has a lot of nice strands in it. Okay, it's a little heavy. So I have the salt in here. I just added a couple of tablespoons of water just to melt the salt, to make it easier to get into the dough. Salt is added. I'm just gonna use my hand to put the salt in there and just do the squeezing method. You can see the fermentation has started, how it's got like a lot of strings in it. The protein is building up. The salt is all mixed in our dough. You can see it's a little sticky, but that's okay. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna let it rest about 4 hours. In between, we're gonna fold, stretch and fold. We're gonna just make a series of stretches like that and folding. Right now, it's not stretching really good because it needs to set and ferment a little bit longer. So I'm gonna let it sit, and we'll be back every 30 minutes to stretch and fold. This is gonna take about 4 hours of what we call bulk fermentation. And yeah, so we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, this is our first fold, stretch and fold. As you can see, fermentation is beginning to develop and a lot of protein strands are developing in the bread. So what we're gonna do, just maybe dip my hand in a little bit of water. It's easier to fold and stretch. Stick your fingers in a little bit of water, not too much, just easier, it doesn't stick. Just stretch and fold, stretch and fold. Just do this about 4 or 5 times. So these series of stretches and folds are going to be every 35-40 minutes. So we'll probably do a whole, probably about 3 more stretches and folds. So I'm going to cover this and set it back. I just want to check the temperature of the bread. It's about 74 degrees. It's a little colder than what I want it to be, but as long as it's not too warm, I'm just gonna wrap it with more towels all the way around, and then we'll come back in about 40 more minutes. We'll do another stretch and fold. Okay, as you can see, beautiful dough, risen really nicely. We didn't have to ferment for 4 hours. Actually, 3 hours was plenty of time. We folded about 4 times, stretch and fold in between. So it looks really beautiful. This bread is really, really delicious when it's done. You're gonna, if you try this recipe, you're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna see the difference between homemade bread and the store-bought bread. There's a huge difference. I want to try to divide this in half without weighing it. Sometimes it's precise and sometimes it's not. You can do this with a knife if you don't have a bench scraper. So I'm gonna just pre-shape it and let it rest for about 15 minutes. Then we'll come back and then do the final shape. So I just pulled the bottom and top. I'm just gonna roll it real loose. Not gonna tighten it this time. This is just a pre-shape. I'm just gonna let it sit here for 15 minutes, I'd say. Do the same for this one. Stretch it up, stretch it down, stretch the sides, and then just roll it loosely. Okay, we let the loaves bench rest after pre-shaping. So now this is the final shaping before baking and final resting period. I'm just gonna fold it tighter this time. I'm gonna close up the edges. Tighten up the edges. There's a lot of air bubbles. And I have a loaf baking pan. There's 2 of them. I just lined them with parchment paper and floured the bottom. So I'm gonna start with this one. Put it in here. And this is gonna be the final fermentation. On this one, you know, it depends on how much it rises. We'd like to go about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. When you see it level with the top, if it's gonna rise all the way up to the top, that's when it's ready. I would say about 2 hours. We'll come back and check on it. Our bread is really beautifully fermented and rose pretty nicely. It took about 2 hours. It's ready to go in the oven. I've got my oven preheated at 500. I'm just gonna score this with my knife. This is a sharp knife. I'm just gonna score from, just go straight across real one time, just to open up the bread. We have to have a little bit of moisture in the oven, so what I did, I put a tray on the bottom and heated it up. I'm gonna put some water in it so it'll create a steam. We need to bake this at 20 minutes with the steam, and then an extra 20 minutes until it's all nice and crusted and it feels hollow. So we're gonna go to the oven right now. I put that tray on the bottom. I didn't pour my water into the oven. I poured it into that little tray on the below. And after 20 minutes, we're gonna lower the oven to 450 and go another 20 minutes until it's ready. That's it. The bread is all done. It's beautiful. It's a little bit extra crusty on top. I didn't want it to be this crusty, but I was busy and I ignored the alarm and it went about 5 extra minutes. It's okay. I mean, it's really beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and remove it so it can cool off on the rack. See how it sounds hollow, and that's what we want. It's beautiful. Look at this. Smells so nice. We cannot cut it right now, so you have to let it cool about an hour and a half. Even though I really want to cut into it, I love the smell of fresh bread coming out of the oven, but if we cut into it too early, then it will be too soggy inside. So we have to let it cool. This one sounds hollow. Okay, the bread is completely cold and now we can actually test it. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice a piece just to see the inside. Okay, it looks really beautiful. The texture is nice, the color is nice, smells amazing. I'm sure it's gonna taste just as good. You want some butter?
No. I like that it's crunchy on the outside.
It's really good. Beautiful. Can you see that? Gorgeous bread. Oh yeah, can you see it wasn't that bad making this bread. It's not hard, it just takes time. If you really want to put an effort into making really good delicious bread for your family, it could be done. Anybody can do this. It looks gorgeous. And if you don't want to use all the bread, you can actually freeze one. I usually, when I make this batch, it's 2. You can cut the ingredients in half, just make 1. But since you're making it, I always like to make 2. One in the freezer, one we use now. And it's delicious. Thank you everyone for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed watching me make this beautiful bread. The ingredients are in the box below. Please don't forget to subscribe and like my videos. I would love to keep making these recipes for everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying it as I am. It's a lot of fun. I love cooking, love baking. Bread is my favorite thing. Thanks again. Bye bye. I'll see you next time.